When people talk about WWII survival, they usually focus on the battles, the tactics, or the geopolitics. But the truth is that tens of millions of ordinary civilians waged a quieter fight every single day. The fight to grow enough food to stay alive. What fascinates me, and probably fascinates you too if you're watching this, is how resourceful people became when space, supplies and time were all painfully limited. Before we dive in, make sure you subscribe to the channel because we go deep into the practical side of survival history, not the superficial overviews most channels settle for. Today's topic is one of those forgotten corners of wartime ingenuity that deserves a lot more attention. These micro-gardening methods fed families, supported resistance networks, and in some cases even supplied frontline units who planted wherever they stopped. These weren't theories. These were real, dirt-under-the-fingernails techniques that solved real starvation problems. So let's spend some time walking through 7 specific WWII gardening tricks that proved you can grow food almost anywhere, even with nothing more than scraps, rubble, or a patch of ruined earth. The first method worth understanding is how wartime gardeners mastered trench-style soil layering in cramped plots. Soil quality across bombed cities was terrible, so civilians created narrow trenches only a few inches wide and layered them like lasagna. The bottom layer was broken brick or charcoal for drainage, followed by thin layers of kitchen scraps, shredded newspaper, and finally whatever topsoil they could scavenge. The trench concentrated fertility in a line instead of trying to improve an entire yard. The practical modern application is straightforward. Anyone with bad soil or a tiny yard can dig a narrow strip and feed that strip heavily instead of wasting amendments across a wide area. If you want to grow carrots, onions, or beans in limited space, trench layering still works flawlessly because it creates a controlled nutrient channel. The next technique relied on vertical frames built from salvage wood and military scrap, allowing crops to climb instead of sprawl. Wartime diaries are filled with references to people using broken siding, scrap metal, and even old bed frames to support peas, cucumbers and pole beans. Vertical growing was not a trend. It was a necessity because gardens were often squeezed between debris piles or walls. To use this today, take any stable frame, door frames, pallets, fencing, and train vining crops upward. 1 square metre can produce triple the yield if you guide plants vertically. Resistance fighters in occupied Europe even hid climbing beans behind destroyed chimneys because the crops blended into rubble. A third forgotten practice involved compact intercropping lines that paired fast growers with slow growers in the same stretch of soil. Space-starved gardeners planted radishes or lettuce right over the top of slower crops like cabbage or beets. By the time the slow growers needed room, the quick crops had already been harvested. This wasn't theory. This was how families stretched every square foot of land. To try this at home, plant a row of lettuce directly above a row of carrots. Harvest the lettuce in a few weeks and let the carrots continue unhindered. You get 2 crops from the space of 1, exactly the kind of efficiency that kept wartime households fed. Fourth, many WWII households built improvised heat pits to extend their growing season. Coal was rationed, wood was scarce, and, well, winters were harsh. Gardeners dug small pits or boxes, lined the bottom with fresh manure, which releases heat as it breaks down, and topped it with a thin layer of soil. This created a naturally warmed bed, capable of starting seedlings weeks earlier than usual. Today, if you want earlier tomatoes or peppers without buying equipment, you can replicate this with a simple manure-lined cold frame. It's the same principle used in 18th century French market gardens, revived by necessity during the war. Another crucial technique was the repurposing of metal containers and debris as microplanters. Shell casings, ration tins, busted helmets, and even sections of rain gutters became small movable beds. These containers allowed people to shift crops into sunlight as buildings threw new shadows after bombings. The advantage today is mobility and tight space efficiency. If you live in an apartment, you can do exactly what wartime Londoners did: line up containers along any sunlit wall and grow herbs, onions, and compact root crops. The trick is to punch drainage holes and keep the soil well aerated. The sixth method involved controlled water capture using simple wartime salvage. Bombings shattered gutters, tore apart roofs, and damaged cisterns, but gardeners adapted by setting up angled boards, canvas sheets, and even sections of metal doors to collect rainwater and funnel it into buckets. Because water was rationed and sometimes contaminated, these improvised catchments kept gardens alive. Anyone today can set up a similar low-tech rain trap by leaning metal sheets or wooden panels at an angle into a clean container. For balcony growers, even a single gutter section placed under the edge of a roof can harvest surprising amounts of water. The final technique worth revisiting is the careful rotation of crops within extremely tiny beds to avoid nutrient collapse. Many assume rotation only matters on farms, but wartime gardeners learned the hard way that planting the same crop repeatedly in the same small patch quickly destroyed productivity. They rotated heavy feeders like cabbage with nitrogen fixers like beans and followed those with root crops. In a modern microgarden, even a 2x3-foot planter can benefit from rotating families of crops each season. The yield difference is dramatic because each plant type repairs or consumes different nutrients. These 7 techniques aren't relics. They're functional, proven methods that helped ordinary people survive when survival wasn't guaranteed. If you're serious about understanding the practical side of WWII history, or you want to apply these methods in your own small garden, these approaches are as effective today as they were under blackout curtains and ration books. If you found this useful, make sure you subscribe to the channel, share this video with another history enthusiast, and help keep this knowledge alive.